a secret for you. The very first picture that I ever sold for actual money was taken with an iPhone. And not even a great iPhone. The old iPhone SE, which it's about that big and has one little camera on the back of it. That's the one. That's the one I used to sell my very first photograph, which was a great reminder to me that the old adage is true. The very best camera in the world is the one that you have with you. So inspired by that early success, I want to share with you 8 tips that you can use to maximize the quality of your iPhone photos. Ready? Let's dive in. The very first thing, one of the most basic things in photography, iPhone or not, is to get your horizon straight. You can turn on grid lines in your camera settings, which will show you the horizontal level lines, and then you can just align that with the horizon and you're good. Or the other way you can do it is to just edit your photograph either on your phone or in post-processing and just rotate it until that horizon is flat. Make sure that you look for that, because an uneven horizon is the #1 sign of an amateur photographer. Tip number 2 is to avoid harsh light. Some people will say to never shoot on like the midday during the afternoon when it's just bright and sunny. I disagree with that. I think you can shoot any time of day and get excellent photos at any point during any day. The trick is to not shoot directly into the sun, because obviously that's going to blow out your entire photograph. Instead of shooting directly into the sun, what do? Well, turn around. Shoot at something that the sun is reflecting off, or go into the shade where the sun isn't so bright. But there are ways to shoot in the afternoon without shooting directly into the sun. So instead of looking at the sun, turn around and shoot what the sun is illuminating. Just make sure you don't have your shadow in the shot. Okay, tip 3. Look for great skies. Storms rolling in, high wispy clouds, white fluffy clouds. That's the stuff that's gonna get you a super, super cool photograph. The sky can add a complete mood to your photo. So watch the forecast, just understand what the weather is gonna do and plan accordingly. Just remember from the previous tip, don't shoot directly into the sun unless you are shooting a sunset, and if the sun is behind clouds or super low on the horizon, you're gonna have a much easier time shooting directly into the sun because it's not so intense. Tip number 4 is to shoot RAW if possible. Any iPhone 12 or above running on, I think, operating system 14.3 and later, you have the opportunity to go into your camera settings and turn on RAW. And what that'll do is give you more dynamic range in your phone and in your pictures, so that when you take an image, you can either edit it on your phone, just in the edit function on your phone, or you can bring it into a post-processing like Lightroom and process your photo there. When you shoot JPEG, your photo is still processed, it's just done automatically by the phone, so you don't even see it. But when you shoot RAW, it's up to you to process that photo the way you see fit. So you can bring it in and you just have much more flexibility in setting the warmth or coolness of your photo, which is the white balance, and working with the highlights of your photograph. So if you have an area of your photo that's super shadowy, you have more room to reduce those shadows to pull out the detail that might be hiding in that photograph. So shooting RAW it really probably should have been the #1 piece of advice on increasing your iPhone photo quality. Some people are a little intimidated to shoot RAW, so they just leave it in JPEG, which is fine. However, you do lose some resolution, you lose image quality. If you shoot RAW, then you'll get as much quality as possible that your phone is capable of shooting. Tip number 5, look for depth in a photograph. A flat photo is just boring. There's nowhere for the eye to go. So look for scenes where the eye can travel into the photograph. Maybe you following a bridge or shooting down a stream, or get your camera or your phone super low to the ground and shoot up into something, into the trees. Or if you have long shadows coming toward you, get super low and shoot into that shadow, and that'll provide some really cool depth in your photograph, where you have the thing causing the shadow and you have the shadow, and there's just a lot of room for that eye to move throughout the photograph. Tip 6 is to use panoramic mode. Now, that has some caveats, because in panoramic mode, you cannot shoot in RAW, which I generally prefer. However, shooting panoramic will just allow you to get that ultra wide capture, which can be super cool if you happen to be in the Grand Canyon or along the Sunset Cliffs in San Diego, or the cliffs of Moher in Ireland or wherever you are, sometimes panoramic mode just makes sense because you can just kind of pan across an entire scene and capture it all. Now don't do it too long. You watch the guide on your phone, it'll show you what to do, but it starts to add some curvature and can look super weird if you're not careful. So just a short panoramic is gonna look absolutely killer. And tip number 7 is to embrace the conditions that you are in. Sometimes you might be hoping to go shoot an epic sunset, but all you have is fog. So embrace that fog. You can create a super mysterious, moody photograph. Look for trees in the fog or even people emerging from the fog. Piers disappearing into the fog are really common and can be super, super moody. So if you're planning for one thing and you get another, just shift your focus and look for the mood that the environment is providing. And finally, tip number 8. This is gonna seem like it's super simple and dumb, but people don't do it or they forget about it. And that is clean your lenses. So how many times have you been shooting or heard people shooting and they say, oh, my photos are so hazy, I don't understand. Well, it's not because they're a bad photographer or there's something wrong with their phone, it's because their lenses are dirty. So grab an alcohol wipe or a microfiber cloth and just wipe down the cameras on the side of your phone, because those things are sitting in your pocket all day long, or your purse or your car or wherever they are. They're getting fingerprints on them, they're getting goo on them, they're getting Burger King grease on them, they're just getting dirty. And when they're dirty, they're not gonna create crisp photographs. So before you go out and shoot, make sure those lenses are just wiped clean. Okay, bonus tips. There are settings in your iPhone that you can do to adjust the exposure of your image. So once you have your camera open and you're shooting your scene, tap the screen with your camera open and you'll get a little exposure meter. Slide that exposure meter up and down with your finger and just watch what it does. It's gonna change the exposure, obviously. It's either gonna become brighter or darker. And if you're shooting on a super bright day, you can use that exposure meter to really bring down the exposure of the photograph and just give it a whole different feel, which can be super cool and useful. Another cool thing that the iPhone can do when you're shooting not RAW, so again, I prefer RAW, but there's a really cool artistic thing you can do if you're not shooting RAW. So if you're shooting in JPEG mode, you can create long exposure photographs really easily. And these are cool because typically long exposures are done with a tripod and a DSLR or mirrorless camera, and you extend your shutter speeds, and there's a whole technical way to do it. With iPhone, it makes it super easy because let's say you are shooting a waterfall or stream or cars coming down a highway. You can just take your picture as you normally would in JPEG mode. Make sure you're in live. Make sure you're in live mode when you're taking your picture. And once you have your picture, you go in to view it in your photos. And in the top, you're gonna have this little arrow and you can click on that, tap on that, and you'll have an option for long exposure. So tap that long exposure and it'll transform your photo. I remember being blown away. Like when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, this is a game changer, because long exposures are typically, not the easiest thing in the world to do, but with iPhone, it makes it super, super simple. And it's a great way to create really neat looking art. If you know of tips that I didn't cover, just leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Next, check out this video on comparing a Canon DSLR versus an iPhone 14 Pro. The difference might surprise you.